Padas books. This is the chapter entitled The Ambassador of Goodwill. Srila Prabhupada had practically no financial means while living in Vrindavan at the Radha Damodar Mandir. Still, he had every intention of spreading the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. His intense desire to do so became especially clear when he received an invitation to join the Congress for Cultivating the Human Spirit in Japan. In preparation for the event, he suspended his other projects and worked exclusively on a book he called Light of the Bhagavat, a manuscript tailor-made for the Japanese event. Simultaneously, he wrote a volley of letters appealing to potential patrons, including India's Prime Minister, beseeching them to pay his fare to Japan so that he might attend the Congress and bring knowledge of the Bhagavata to Japan and the rest of the world. In the end, he was forced to cancel his trip, for no one gave him the money he needed. But he now had the manuscript for the Light of Bhagavata completed. Characteristically undeterred, Srila Prabhupada continued to pray to the Lord, when will that day come when a temple will be established in every house, in every corner of the world? Prahlad Maharaj in his prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev expresses his desire to live near big cities and towns, unlike most transcendentalists who prefer solitude, to deliver the fallen souls who are working hard, making elaborate plans for material happiness by maintaining their families, societies, and countries. Similarly, although Srila Prabhupada referred to Vrindavan as his home, it was also the base from which, out of compassion for the fallen souls of the world, he planned his campaign to distribute Srimad Bhagavatam and the holy names of Krishna to every continent on the globe. He created a pamphlet to promote sales of his first publication of Srimad Bhagavatam. The headline of that pamphlet said, Srimad Bhagavatam, India's message of peace and goodwill. Soon, Srila Prabhupada would become the world's greatest ambassador of this message. A careful study of this pamphlet reveals much about his divine graces, indomitable spirit. He had produced only 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, but the pamphlet advertised 60 volumes of the elaborate English version. Although he would arrive in America with no support, no connections, and no money, his pamphlet includes the words all over the world for scientific knowledge of God. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 12, text number 14. Tasmat. Okay. So read a couple this verse until we reach purport. Tasmat akirti yashasor jayapa jayayorapi samasyat sukha dukkha bhyam mrityu jivitayostata. Translation: Since everything is dependent on the supreme will of the personality of Godhead, one should be equipoised in fame and defamation, victory and defeat, life and death, in their effects represented as happiness and distress. One should maintain oneself in equilibrium without anxiety. Text 15. Sattvam rajas tama iti. Sattvam rajas tama iti. Prakritir natmano guna prakritir natmano guna tatra sakshinam atmanam tatra sakshinam atmanam yo veda sa na badyate yo veda sa na badyate Sattvam rajastama iti prakritir natmano guna tatra sakshinam atmanam yo vedasana bhadyate Sattvam rajastama iti prakritir natmano guna tatra sakshinam atmanam yo vedasana bhadyate Sattvam rajastama iti prakritirnatmano guna tatra sakshinam atmanam yo vedasana bhadyate Sattvam rajastama iti prakritirnatmano guna tatra sakshinam atmanam yo vedasana bhadyate Sattvam rajastama iti prakritirnatmano guna tatra sakshinam atmanam yo vedasana bhadyate Sattvam rajastamaiti prakritirnatmano guna tatra sakshinam atmanam yo vedasana bhadyate Vaishnavis. Sattvam rajastamaiti prakritirnatmano guna tatra sakshinam atmanam yo vedasana bhadyate Sattvam, the mode of goodness. Raja, the mode of passion. Tama, the mode of ignorance. Iti, thus, prakriti, of the material nature. Na, not. Atmana, of the spirit soul. Guna, the qualities. Tatra, in such a position. Sakshinam, an observer. Atmanam, the self. Ya, anyone who. Veda, knows. Sa, he. Na, not. Badyate, is bound. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. One who knows that the three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are not qualities of the soul, but qualities of material nature, and who knows that the pure soul is simply an observer of the actions and the reactions of these qualities, should be understood to be a liberated person. He is not bound by these qualities. Purport. As the Lord explains in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 54, Brahmabhuta prasanatma nashochati na kankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. One who is transcendentally situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. When one attains self realization, the Brahmabhuta stage, one knows that whatever happens during his life is due to the contamination of the modes of material nature. The living being, the pure soul, has nothing to do with these modes. In the midst of the hurricane of the material world, everything changes very quickly. But if one remains silent and simply observes the actions and reactions of the hurricane, he is understood to be liberated. The real qualification of the liberated soul is that he remains Krishna conscious, undisturbed by the actions and reactions of the material energy. Such a liberated person is always jubilant. He never laments or aspires for anything. Since everything is supplied by the Supreme Lord, the living entity, being fully dependent on Him, should not protest or accept anything in terms of his personal sense gratification. Rather, he should receive everything as the mercy of the Lord and remain steady in all circumstances. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shirada Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. So the translation again. One who knows that the three qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance, are not qualities of the soul, but qualities of material nature, and who knows that the pure soul is simply an observer of the actions and reactions of these qualities, should be understood to be a liberated person. He is not bound by these qualities. Since the living entity is here in a material existence, since time immemorial, there are so many actions and reactions accumulated to be manifested. There's many different varieties. Some of the actions and reactions are in a form of seed. It's called bija. Then other actions are starting just to sprout. They kind of not manifested, but they are about to manifest. And some actions and reactions are starting to manifest. They may not be fully manifested, but some experience may be already there. And some other actions and reactions are fully manifest, and we can be, it's almost like described like a hurricane. Sometimes you can feel that, whatever this actions and reactions we're getting, it may feel like a hurricane. Even we understand that for devotee, when it's getting a token reaction, it's still when you're going through some um, Krishna's mercy, because we know that Krishna takes those reactions in his hands and only kind of gives out and delivers only kind of as much as needed to purify devotee, to bring a devotee closer to him, still the experience can be very, very challenging. So, for a person who is not a devotee, this good and bad reactions is kind of throwing a person up, and it's throwing down. And those things, like is mentioned here in a previous verse, there's a fame and defamation. Sometimes it's coming, sometimes it's victory, and sometimes it is defeat, and sometimes it's life, and sometimes it's even death. So this, in relationship with this, what comes is happiness and distress. Whenever there is victory, there is happiness. Like there is like a international football championship is taking place now, and one team is winning and another team is losing. So on one hand, one country is just, everybody's like very, very happy and excited, but on other hand it is a distress. And then you go to the next stage and then it can be opposite. This one country who was distressed now is happy, and etc. So this is material existence. Or some fame comes, sometimes the fame comes, and sometimes the fame goes, sometimes some defamation comes, and there is happiness and distress in a relationship with that. And this is material existence, this hurricane or roller coaster of karma that living entity is experiencing. Sometimes it's a good karma, sometimes it's a bad karma, sometimes there is wealth, sometimes there is poverty, sometimes there is beauty, sometimes the beauty fades away. All the different opulences of Krishna that living entity desires in this material world, and it gets into some minute quantity, which just comes and goes. So sometimes this material existence is considered like a yo-yo. Yo-yo goes down and goes up, and these actions and reactions of the strings of material energy, or the modes of nature, as we read, goodness, passion, and ignorance. All those different reactions comes in a good way, sometimes in a passionate way, and sometimes in an ignorant, this destructive way. So, for a devotee, of course, in the beginning stages, we also, although we're trying to practice Krishna consciousness, we are also very, very much affected by these various types of actions and reactions too. The karma hasn't necessarily, if you haven't fully surrendered, there may be some karma still remaining, or Krishna is using that karma to purify us, to help us to surrender, to help us to bring us closer to Krishna. So there will be still various things that will happen in our life, although we are in the beginning kind of attracted, just chant and be happy, and everything will be absolutely fantastic. But that is actually the point. Are we really? Is the quality of our taking shelter, and in order to remain equipoised and remain equilibrium when things are going, like up or going down. I mean, when things are going up, to some extent, it's a bit more even difficult. You just think everything is fantastic and you just ride on the wave of success. But things, when they're going down, then we should immediately take shelter of Krishna. In either circumstance, we should be taking full shelter of Krishna. And that is ultimately the solution, and that is the quality of a liberated soul. And technically speaking, it is a training for us, because if everything is absolutely the same and absolutely steady, there is enough, every single day is the same and everything is fantastic, or just like normal or neutral, it's very difficult to take shelter. It's very difficult to really chant from the heart and cry for the Lord's help. If your day is completely normal and there is no problem, then how you can really apply yourself and cry for Lord's mercy? So you should really take opportunity when we are going through this, different actions and reactions of goodness, passion, ignorance, victory, defeat, fame and defamation, life and death, wealth, poor situation, whatever the things we are going through. We should understand and learn and practice that this is opportunity to take a full shelter. And actually, Sankirtan book distribution is a very powerful school. It is actually a school of taking shelter, because you're out there, the people are passing by, and it can be very passionate at some times of the day, or sometimes people can be a bit ignorant and rude to you and challenges you. They challenge your false ego, or challenge, some of desires that you may have, because people, the things that you want, and people are passing by, they having it, and they have that thing that you may want, in a gross ways, or maybe in some subtle ways, whatever they may have, some fame, or some beauty, or some possessions, or whatever the case may be, is challenging us. Uh, so therefore, it's an opportunity for us to really take shelter, to pray very intensely, to take shelter of Krishna, and the philosophy becomes truly alive in those challenges. When we're out there, we want to distribute books, we are crying for Krishna, and we maybe not getting anywhere. We're just going nowhere. Even if you like some famous book distributor, you are out there. It doesn't mean that you cannot take shelter, or you shouldn't take shelter. You must. You have to beg for the Lord's mercy. And actually, in the long term, in the shorter term, there may be some karmic factor, but in a really long term of book distribution, those who kind of become empowered in the long term to distribute books is because they learn to take shelter of Krishna, and they learn to recognize when they're doing well that it is mercy of Krishna, and when they stop doing well, just like like yesterday, first hour it was just amazing, and then the next few hours it wasn't amazing from the point of view of how many books are going out. Or Panchatattva Prabhu was saying, on Saturday the books was just absolutely flying, and yesterday they weren't absolutely flying. It was a bit slower. So sometimes it seems like a book has wings, and sometimes the books may feel like a ton of bricks. Like, yesterday, those few sets came out in the first hour, and then the final set I was carrying for the rest of the day, which gave like a pain to the back. So we have to see that all this is mercy of the Lord, and we should maintain our equilibrium and cultivate our full dependence on Him, because those ups and downs is always provoking us, encouraging us, challenging us to really get out of comfort zone, get out of sleepy practice of Krishna consciousness, sleepy japa, or just like a reading. Sometimes anybody had experience to read a few pages and you have absolutely no idea what you just read. You just like a few, like 10, 15 minutes later, you just realize, oh my God, I have absolutely no idea what I just read. And your mind is like somewhere else, but you're like a really connected. You actually going through some challenge, going through some difficulty. You just approach the transcendence with great hunger. And that it makes the difference between like two people are sitting in a class or two people are distributing books, is what is actually your hunger. Well, are you hunger for this are you hungry for this transcendental knowledge? Are you hungry for Krishna's mercy? Are you hungry to become an instrument of Krishna's mercy? And that makes a difference between two people who seem to be externally doing the same thing, is that internal eagerness, internal aspiration, and internal highest aspiration. So just like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that if somebody desires pure love of God, even they may be very, very far away, he becomes extremely pleased, becomes extremely happy, and bestows the mercy on such a person. Um, so through those challenges and difficulties, we really should, the idea and the purpose, when we understand what is going on, and what is the purpose of this, because sometimes we may think, what's going on, why this is happening to me, is others seem to be doing okay, why this specifically to me, I haven't done anything wrong, I'm just trying to be Krishna conscious, I'm hearing and chanting. But actually, this is to increase our desire for Krishna. And this nishta is the next stage after anartha nivritti. And therefore, nishta means fixed. So fixed means that doesn't mean that things are not flickering. There is still various types of actions and reactions, and goodness, passion, and ignorance are going on. But to be fixed means we remain fixed in our sadhana, or sometimes we even need to increase our sadhana in order to take shelter when there is challenges. So, like instinctively and subconsciously, we tend to drop our spiritual practices in terms of the quality, or sometimes in terms of quantity, and that actually just makes the difficulty even more difficult. But actually, if you remain fixed, and this Krishna Katha, Krishna Kirtan, and Krishna Prasadam, if that is our shelter, and we understand that this is ultimate shelter, and it will increase our desire if we still try to remain fixed in our commitments when there are challenges, that very significantly will rise our faith, because we will feel shelter in all of that turmoil. And Prabhupada says, like, in the midst of the hurricane of material world, everything changes very quickly. But if one remains silent and simply observes the actions and reactions of the hurricane, he is understood to be liberated. So this is leading us into liberation. This is purifying us, because the intensity of our practice, intensity of our prayer, intensity of our taking shelter, it increases the fire that purifies our hearts, that purifies our minds, and allows Krishna's mercy to enter our minds and hearts. So we should immediately run to Krishna when there is a difficulty. This is what is exemplified by the residents of Vrindavan in every single page. There, as soon as there is difficulty, as soon as there is challenges, from their heart, with a deep intensity, with calling, they invite Krishna to help. And of course, there is a mixed devotion when we invite Krishna to just do something for us, for our material well-being. And there is intensity that leads into pure devotion, that we are begging for Krishna to be fully engaged in devotional service, no matter what happens in our life, that they remain fixed. And this is what will give us the greatest happiness, if we still want to serve Krishna, no matter what difficulty and challenge and action and reaction we are uh, going through. And interestingly enough, if you do that, even on material platform, there is this suffering may come, we will remain jubilant. Will remain jubilant even if there are difficulties and challenges. And the same thing, it happens almost this hurricane and turmoil is on the book distribution. You're there on the street. You just take shelter of Krishna. Don't give up if things are not going, if you're not getting the result that you would like to, if the people are not stopping. Just increase your intensity, increase your prayer, increase your taking shelter, approach a devotee, inquire submissively. Uh, and it will be a great success by the end of the day, whether you distributed many books or maybe your heart become very intensely purified, and the next time Krishna will empower you because you've been very pleased by your effort. So are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you for the class. I just, well, one comment and a question. The comment was, it's interesting that mixed devotees tend to get mixed up. And he's talking, the translation says knows, and I just wondered, how do we know that we know? And he says he's not bound toward any, so he's not bound. So is a liberated devotee aware that he's not bound? Or because of his humility, is he not aware that he's not bound? And how does he know he knows, or does he not, or does he think he doesn't know?
Thank you very much. Very good question. I think we need to ask a liberated devotee this question. Aš išpabaudžiu man tą gyvenat. So anyway, definitely don't have any personal experience on this, but as from what I understand and how Prabhupada acted and what you read in Chaitanya Chaitamrita, some pure devotees, they reveal their minds and reveal their hearts at times. It seems like two things are going on at the same time, because this achintya bheda bheda tattva is always going on, not just in terms of how the soul is inconceivably one and different from the Lord. But it's also the same principle is going on in practically every part of the philosophy. So it seems that a liberated soul is kind of, or even like Krishna himself is simultaneously aware and not aware of his supremacy when he is going through Vrindavan Leela, is running from Mother Yashoda, is crying, is fearful, at the same time is simultaneously aware in every nook and corner of his existence. And so similarly, a pure devotee is seen to be simultaneously aware that he is a pure devotee, just like I read in Chaitanya Charitamrita just a few days ago, where Prabhupada is referring, and not in a proud way, obviously, he's very, very humble, but he says that envious people do not appreciate the potency of a pure devotee to distribute Krishna consciousness in every nook and corner of the world. And it's like very clear that he's referring to his service to Guru Maharaj, or maybe he's thinking about Guru Maharaj, actually, his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he's just feeling himself to be an instrument. So he has some understanding, or he has got, when he was in the Sparky United States, he said, I have a center in every part of the world, but the time separates. So it looks like he's got this understanding that he's got this special empowerment, but simultaneously feels he's very humble, unqualified, and not just a simple, humble servant of spiritual master. So I don't know if that answers the question, but this is two things going on.
Yeah, I was thinking probably it helps if he's open to feedback, so he can verify one way or the other. Otherwise, and that's the whole idea, isn't it? It's an international society for Krishna consciousness, because it's a social. A lot of the qualities that we're developing as devotees, they're not qualities that we can develop in a cave in the Himalayas, because you never really know whether you are humble or brave in the Himalayas. You only find out through the association of the devotees and the feedback that you get from them, and then you may have thought you were liberated, and then you find out that others don't think you are so liberated, or maybe you think you're really unqualified, and others say, no, you're doing really well. You wouldn't know unless you were getting that feedback.
True, thank you.
So thanks, Prabhu. This idea of being like fixed in happiness and distress, I'm just wondering, because for devotees, it makes sense, because we can understand this is all material and there's a higher spiritual reality which is much, much more appealing. So any sort of material happiness is like, well, what is it? You're just sort of putting something in your mouth, like, it's just food, it's not. But when it comes to like preaching and sharing these things with others, because it's difficult to tell people about, the extent of how great the spiritual world is, when it's just, you're beginning to speak to someone. So quite often we more just emphasize like the negative side of the material world. And in this way, if we just get rid of, attachment to happiness and distress, it can seem a little bit, cold, or a little bit Buddhist, or a little bit sort of impersonal way, just become detached. So how to actually give this message to people, if we're just beginning to preach?
Yeah, in the beginning it may feel like that, because our attraction to Krishna is kind of flickering. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not there. Sometimes you go through a period when it's completely not there. So we can go a little bit on this, just a detachment, and not really experiencing so much connection to Krishna. And of course, we only able to give people as much as we, as much as our realization goes. But it is a Rupa Goswami's principle that we have to cultivate this attraction to Krishna from very beginning, and then our preaching will be a lot more potent, because we're not just explaining the things that are not great in material existence. This is suffering, or some people are not even suffering; they have a fantastic time. It will be very difficult to preach to them. But if you are very strongly connected to Krishna, and it is also very much connected to the topic of this class, about liberated person, although is going through this very great distress, it remains jubilant. And it's something about there is when devotee is connected with Krishna, there is a certain degree of effulgence, inspiration, and etc. That people don't see and don't experience as material existence. This kind of touches the people, even they may be materially happy. They see, actually there is a lot more than being material happy. So that quality of our Krishna conscious practices, and also by preaching, we attract a lot of mercy. So we may not have that realization, but Prabhupada has a full realization. So Prabhupada can speak to them until we become stronger and convinced, and representing Srila Prabhupada very nicely and very purely. Then it will have, our words will have a much more effect, and will be able to inspire a lot more people with the message. But in the meantime, as we are getting purified, some days it will be, some days it will be not. But Prabhupada is always on that full platform. And sometimes, just like a books can speak to us, when we are really hungry, it will speak to people as well, at the right time and the right place. So stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.